Let's take a look at some fascinating pieces of mob history information. Some are bizarre, some are myths, but all of them interesting. I'm James Gladwish and welcome to OC Shorts, bringing you detailed historical snapshots of the American Mafia and other organised crime. Feel free to subscribe if you like that sort of thing. Today, we're going to take a quick look at a selection of interesting Mafia facts and stories. First up, let's check out a fascinating story involving former Colombo family boss Carmine Persico. Carmine Persico was only a couple of years into his sentence of over 100 years from the commission case, and also the Colombo family's Star Quest trial, when he penned a letter to Jerry Capone responding to one of the journalist's articles. Persico's letter read, "Hello Jerry, hey, I thought we were all right. So why are you making me older than I really am? You made me 57 years old. I'm only 55 and will be 56 on August the 8th. Don't rush these years past me. I'll need my youth to be able to finish this 100 years I have to do. And if you keep treating me bad and making these mistakes about me, I'll have to start reading Pete Hamill's column, and you won't be the famous Jerry Capone in my book anymore. Stay well, Carmine Jr. Persico." Persico demonstrating that even whilst serving a sentence that would mean he would die in prison, the Colombo family boss still had a sense of humour. Next up, let's look at a selection of interesting mob nicknames. Some nicknames derive from a mobster's appearance, such as longtime Genovese associate Carmine Franco, who was known as Papa Smurf, after the popular cartoon character. Sam Golfbag Hunt was a hitman for Al Capone, and he was known to carry his weapons in a golf bag. Hunt is suspected of being the gunman in the Jaime Weiss killings. Police found a shotgun and shells in a golf bag in a room on West Superior Street after the Jaime Weiss assassination. Buffalo organised crime figure Donald the Turtle Panapinto earned his curious name allegedly due to the fact that he used to administer beatings slowly to his victims. Gambino boss Paul Castellano was a man who was often labelled a racketeer rather than a gangster like John Gotti. And when we look at the conversation he had with veteran mobster Joe Piney Armone, we see that there appears to be some logic to his measured approach when it comes to deciding whether to kill a man or not. Look, when we sit down to clip a guy, we have to remember what's at stake here. There's some hazards. Guys forget that. They get a guy behind in his vig payments, they get a hard on about it. Right away, they want to whack him. Why? Just because they're pissed off? They're aggravated? But what I say is, hey, you're making a living with this guy. He gets you aggravated, and right away you want to use the hammer? How'd you get your fucking money then? It's means and ends. The idea is to collect. Armone, but you know, Paul, I think some guys just take so much pleasure from breaking heads that they'd almost rather not get paid. Castellano, yeah. We got some guys like that. Dick fists, I call them. I'm always saying to them, just to take a guy out, that ain't the point. Because I tell you, Piney, anytime I can remember that we knocked guys out, it cost us. It's like there's a tax on it or some shit. Somebody gets arrested, or there's a fuck up, which means we gotta clip another guy. Maybe a guy we don't want to lose. A traditional Mafia induction ceremony is usually held in somewhere like an apartment, or the basement of a house, or in the back room of a restaurant. A gun and knife are placed on a table. A picture of a saint is burned in the hands of the proposed member. However, there are examples of more unusual and makeshift ceremonies. In 1962, Philadelphia mob boss Angelo Bruno made plans to induct 4 mobsters into his crime family. However, in an interesting twist, Angelo Bruno decided to perform the ceremonies at a wedding, without telling anyone in his family beforehand. Even his underboss Ignatius Denaro and his consigliere Joseph Rugnetta had no idea of Bruno's plans. As one FBI file states, PHT3 learned on December 22, 1962, that Angelo Bruno had, at an earlier date, assembled a group of amici nostri of the Philadelphia family of La Cosa Nostra for the purpose of making an additional 4 members for the Philadelphia family. Bruno stated to informant that the new members were made at a wedding which took place in Trenton, New Jersey. Bruno indicated that he did not confide in anyone prior to the wedding that he intended to make 4 additional members. However, he stated that he made certain the 4 persons in whom he had an interest would be present at the wedding. Bruno stated, according to informant, that while at the wedding he advised Ignatius De Niro, underboss of the Philadelphia family, and Joseph Rugnetta, consigliere of the Philadelphia family, of his intention. Subsequently, Bruno called in the Capo regime present at the wedding, advised them of his intention, and then the 4 new members were made. Bonanno family captain Dominic Sonny Black Napolitano is alleged to have been murdered due to being one of the men who allowed undercover FBI agent Joe Piney, under the alias of Donnie Brasco, to operate within the Bonanno crime family. I cover Sonny Black's gangland execution in greater detail in a previous video. Mob legend tells us that when Napolitano's body was found, his hands had been cut off. The severing of hands was allegedly symbolic, as Sonny Black had shaken hands unknowingly with undercover FBI agent Joe Piney, aka Donnie Brasco, when he let him grow close to him. However, the autopsy of Napolitano's corpse tells another story. According to the autopsy, Sonny Black's remains showed signs of severe decomposition, which included some of his fingers. There is also evidence that suggests that his fingers had been either eaten or chewed by animals after his body had been poorly disposed of. The press and the media got wind of the missing digits, and this was eventually spun into the gangland myth that we know today. In 1967, Colombo family mobster John Sonny Franzese was sentenced to 50 years in prison for bank robbery conspiracy, after he was alleged to have masterminded a series of heists. There are many out there who believe that Sonny Franzese actually served the entire 50 years, coming out of prison at the age of 100. However, this is not the case at all. John Sonny Franzese was indeed sentenced to 50 years in 1967, but he did not go to prison straight away, and in fact, he was released out on bail pending a series of appeals, and spent the next couple of years as a free man. As the 1970 newspaper reports, in April 1967, he was hit with a 50-year sentence and $20,000 fine, but has remained free in a $150,000 bail pending a protracted series of appeals. Sonny Franzese would eventually start his epic sentence on the 26th of March 1970. However, just over 8 years later, Sonny Franzese was released on parole. As one 1978 newspaper reports, reputed organised crime figure John Sonny Franzese, who is serving a 50-year prison term for conspiracy to rob banks, will be released on parole next month. His release date was set for November the 14th, 1978. Franzese was back out on the streets a month before Christmas 1978, and then spent nearly the next 4 years as a free man, until he was picked up on a parole violation in 1982. It was reported, John Sonny Franzese, a ranking Cosa Nostra figure, was found guilty yesterday of violating his federal parole by meeting with fellow mobsters. Franzese was ordered remanded to a federal prison and could serve up to 10 years on the 2 violations. Franzese, described by both federal and local law enforcement agents as the heir apparent to the throne of the Joseph Colombo crime family, has been held at the US Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan since June the 18th on charges he violated the terms of his parole by meeting with two crime figures in 1981 and 1982. They were identified as Gambino family captain Carmine Lombardozzi, a convicted loan shark and gambler, and convicted narcotics dealer Robert Cordici, a Colombo family associate. Authorities said the meetings took place in Brooklyn restaurants. After being sentenced for these parole violations, Franzese was initially due to be released on the 11th of March 1983. However, whilst imprisoned, Franzese was found guilty of another count of parole violation stemming from his time on the street after his 1978 release. A parole board recommended he remain locked up for another 15 months. Sonny Franzese was released sometime in 1984. He'd been out on the street for just under 2 years when he was yet again sent back to prison in 1986. As one newspaper reports, in 1986 he was sent back to prison for 8 years after allegedly threatening a loan shark victim at a Long Island disco. He will be eligible for parole in 1994. Released in April 1994, Sonny Franzese just couldn't help himself from associating with other mobsters. And yet again, after just under 2 years as a free man, the 77-year-old Franzese was arrested on parole violation. As one newspaper writes, legendary mob capo John Sonny Franzese was arrested yesterday, interrupted by federal agents as he ate a bowl of spinach soup in a Long Island restaurant, and charged with violating parole. Under surveillance since he left federal prison 2 years ago, the Colombo crime family's 77-year-old elder statesman could face going back for 25 years, the second half of a 50-year term handed to him after he was convicted of a series of heists in 1966. The alleged parole violation? Associating with alleged mobsters, specifically Billy Russo, the son of Colombo crime family acting boss Andrew Mush Russo, and Louis Fenza, an associate of Franzese's son Michael. Franzese would serve around 2 years and then would be back to his old ways in 1998. Then, in November 2000, having coffee at a Long Island Starbucks with some Colombo family mobsters landed Franzese back in prison for 3 years. After serving his latest stretch for violating parole, all of which stemmed from his initial 1967 conviction, the aging Sonny Franzese found himself promoted to the position of underboss by imprisoned family boss Carmine Persico in 2005. And then, after around 4 years on the street, the 89-year-old Franzese was busted again on the usual charge. It was reported in 2007. For the third time since 1996, Franzese was back in federal lockup. This time after authorities spotted him sharing donuts with associates in the Colombo crime family, violating his parole. In the 2 earlier arrests, Franzese was nabbed after meeting with alleged mobsters at eateries. "It's really sad," said his son Michael, who followed the elder Franzese into organised crime before leaving the mob and becoming a born-again Christian. "I believe he wasn't very active at all, but then again, I'm not with him 24/7. Many of his friends are dead." No surprise there, since the elder Franzese's contemporaries included mob veterans like Joe Colombo, who died in 1978, or Alphonse Aliboy Persico, who died in 1989. But the authorities said Franzese was spotted more than once in recent weeks sharing breakfast pastries with 21st Century Colombo members. Franzese was picked up Wednesday during a scheduled check-in with his parole officer, according to the FBI. Sonny Franzese would serve 19 months, and he didn't let old age stop his criminal ways when he was back out on December the 24th, 2008. Famously, after 2 years living as a free man, in 2011, the 93-year-old mobster received 8 years in prison for racketeering, including shaking down a couple of strip clubs. Sonny Franzese would be released on June the 23rd, 2017, at the age of 100. He would die a free man on February the 24th, 2020, at the age of 103. With regards to the myth that Sonny Franzese served 50 years, this is incorrect, and he was actually active on the streets more than most people are aware. All in all, he still served a considerable amount of time, albeit on and off. In total, the legendary mob figure was behind bars for around 29 years. But as demonstrated, not all in one stretch. I hope you found that compilation interesting. Thanks for watching.